This is the NQAT Daily, and we're going to talk about Thomas Tuchel, who has taken up the position of England manager and been announced today. So, Tom, initial impressions. Tuchel, England manager, not United manager. We'll get on to what this means for Erik Ten Hag in a little bit, I think. But what's your gut reaction?
Yeah, shocked. It felt like it obviously came out of nowhere. However, it didn't, because it was done 8 days ago. Therefore, before the very, very weird press conferences that Lee Carsley was generating, and also the very, very weird formation that Lee Carsley played, which feels like a bit of a trolling moment, actually, in retrospect now. But my reaction, surprise more than anything. It felt like it was going to be an Englishman. It seemed like it was Eddie Howe's, and I kind of wanted it to be Eddie Howe as well. Not from an England perspective. I just wanted Newcastle to lose him because I think he's a pretty good manager, and I feel like once they lose Eddie Howe, I think they'll lose a lot of momentum. But yeah, this came out of nowhere. It feels like, in retrospect, kind of looking at it, and he's probably the best man for the job, actually. I mean, he's not English, which has caused a lot of xenophobia and racism across a number of places. But I think he's, in terms of just what he brings as a football coach and who's available, he's probably the best man for the job, I think.
Yeah. Well, the royal family aren't English, so hey.
No.
As has been well pointed out, I did enjoy Sam Wallace in The Telegraph writing an article advocating for Pep Guardiola 2 days ago, and then writing another one about Tuchel, going how disgusting it is that England have got a foreign manager. Interesting,
and
Sam. Interesting.
That is common as well. Like I was listening to Gary Neville's one of Gary Neville's rants earlier, and he said, "Oh, I would have made an exception for Pep Guardiola." And on the back page of the Daily Mail, which says, I can't remember, dark day for England or something like that, they said, "Oh, we would have made an exception for Pep Guardiola." So, like,
I know.
These principles are very, very,
Your xenophobia has principles. Yeah, there's a limit. There's a limit to it. I mean, Gary Neville in that piece interview also said the state of English coaching is dire. I'm paraphrasing here. We are not respected throughout Europe, but it should have been an English coach. Hey, none of these things line up very well. Tuchel's interesting because he's taken a job where clearly he'll make a lot less money working for England than he would have done at club level, maybe even a third. I presume there's a very large bonus in there if he manages to win the 26th World Cup in the US and Canada and Mexico. And maybe that's the thing that's really driven him. He sees the talent pool, which is very deep. I wouldn't recommend that he plays about 18 number 10s as Lee Carsley did. It didn't quite work, did it? Try and cram in every player you can. But he's probably seen that talent pool and thought there's a really good chance here to go and win the World Cup. And clearly he's not going to get the Germany job because Nagelsmann has got it. So this is a big one if he's going to take up an international position. So, yeah, I mean, I think lots of contradictions in the coverage of this and the reaction to it. Some of it very, very predictable. I mean, we've been here and done this before with Sven and Capello and who else? Steve McLaren, of course, Dutchman / Jamaican, taking on the England role. So none of it really a surprise. The little England mentality does seem to come out very quickly in these moments, doesn't it? And surprise, surprise, Nigel Farage, who is voicing his disgust at it. Nigel Farage, of course, famously has a German wife. So Germans are only good for some people, apparently. I find this all very odd. I went up and counted. This is how sad I am, Tom. Apparently I have too much time on my hands. 218 full FIFA members. There's a few associates as well. Countries that aren't formally recognized and so on and so on. Well, the 218, 135 have a manager who is not of that nation.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. Now, obviously, some of the quote-unquote big national teams tend to have coaches that are of their nation. So this is where it's slightly sideways. Tend to.
But I think that's mostly to do with the fact that they produce very, very good coaches from their nation. Like Spain, Germany, prime examples. Italy as well. Italy has always created great managers. They have a university for their managers to go through. They basically become scholars of the game almost. England doesn't.
Yeah.
An English manager has never won the English Premier League. The last person to win the top flight is Howard Wilkinson, I think, in 1990 with Leeds. Brian Clough is probably like the only top English manager do you think of ever? Like, obviously we've got Bobby Robson, Terry Venables in there, good coaches, but like, I don't think neither of them have won the European Cup. And you think back to like the whole history of English football, it's Scottish managers that have been the best ones. And obviously since our great Scott retired in 2013, it's just been constantly won by foreign managers again.
Yeah.
That's the difference. And I feel, I heard Rory Smith, because Rory Smith was on the side of the Daily Mailers, essentially, but in a very different way. He was saying it just shouldn't be the case that we choose them. I think international football should just be for people from that nation, but that isn't the case. So I feel like he was almost like having a hypothetical argument, because if England want to have the best success, I guess you just choose the best person for the job. And if you don't choose the best person for the job, is that xenophobia? Is that racism? Is that discriminatory potentially?
Well, yes. I mean, if FIFA want this to be the case, they just make the rule that you have to be an eligible party in the same way that you do with players. And it's always been the case that they've made the argument that for development purposes, they don't want to do that. So, like, you play within the rules. Morally, well, look, there's only 3 English managers in the Premier League. Eddie Howe, who it seems Newcastle weren't prepared to release. I'm sure the FA would have talked to him or tried to talk to him if that was possible. And we saw how they behaved with Dan Ashworth. I guess they don't want to let Howe out of that contract until they decided to get rid of him. And then there's Sean Dyche at Everton. I mean, are we really going to go back to a long ball merchant? I don't think so. And then I've completely forgotten the third one.
Gary O'Neill.
Gary O'Neill, that's it.
Yeah, it's not particularly inspiring, is it?
No, he's currently hovering around the relegation zone, so and doesn't really have the CV for it at all. Neither does Lee Carsley. And I think you've seen the reaction from the press. He's had, 3 or 4 games in charge as temporary charge. Yeah, he was kind of a bit weird about it, wasn't he? Going back and forth in press conferences saying, I want the job, I don't want the job, I'm just here for the 3 cycles. Then I'm going back to the under-21s and then sort of equivocating on that. But he doesn't have a CV for a top international manager's job. And clearly, if he'd taken the job, the line from the press, who are generally speaking, the sports press in England, completely antagonistic all of the time, would have been, he's not qualified for the job, which it was about Gareth Southgate. Who, despite not actually winning anything with England and frustrating everyone with his stupid waistcoats and negative tactics, has the most successful record of any English manager for 50 years, basically. So I don't think, well, there's not a lot of consistency in media coverage, of course, and I think they're looking at driving a narrative, as you can see with Sam Wallace being a complete hypocrite within 2 days of himself. Like, really, just disgusting. Come on. But you can see like what the FA were thinking. They were just thinking we're going to get a good manager, and we're coming back to Tuchel. He is a coach who has consistently built excellent defenses, understands how to be really, really hard to beat. Has struggled, I think, both the Paris Saint-Germain and Bayern and Chelsea to create teams that create lots of chances and score goals. Maybe an issue, but as we talked about before, international management is kind of different. International football is different, and especially tournament football. If you go through a tournament hardly conceding a goal, you're going to go deep into that tournament.
Yeah, and I think he is the best man for the job as well. And there's no, I've seen Gary Neville say this is an admission of the that the coaching pathway at the FA isn't working. But if you're going to only choose people from the coaching pathway, you're limiting your pool to what, 3 or 4 people?
Well, they haven't proven anything. What, the under-17s, under-19s, under-20s, under-21s, right?
So they have to be English. They have to have come through the coaching pathway if you're going to make this argument. Therefore, someone like Graham Potter, he's not been through a pathway. He's not been through the English system. He went abroad just after he'd become a PE teacher and therefore kind of learned most of his stuff there. Anyhow, left the game at 35 or something and went straight into management at AFC Bournemouth, and then went to watch Atletico Madrid and kind of learned a lot there. And like, if you kind of, and this is what the weird narrative around this English manager, it has to be English management, as a failure of the FA. Like, none of the successful English managers have been through the system. And well, you've just discussed it. There are no successful English managers really. Eddie Howe is the one, and obviously Graham Potter had experience at Chelsea. But then you're kind of looking at further afield to people like Lampard. Like, I heard someone say it was Jamie Carragher who was saying that he would considered Frank Lampard for the job because he used to play for England. Like, we're going back to this kind of narrative in England that I thought we got rid of, and now it's kind of going back to this thing of, it has to be English. I understand that in a context of a different nation. So, like, for example, like, obviously I watch and read and write about Hungarian football, and it's different there. Like, to bring in a foreign manager who's never been in Hungary, doesn't really know the culture, doesn't know the players, because the players is a big one. Like, if you go to Hungarian league, like, you're not going to know loads of the players who are playing, whereas everyone knows the English players. Like, it's not like you're going into that team and going, or into that squad and going, oh, who am I going to pick? He's also managed in England. He knows the culture. He speaks perfect English. I think, like, the Capello comparison is completely like disingenuous. It's not comparable. Like, Capello had never managed in England. He could barely speak English. Didn't really feel like he was that bothered about it anymore. And this is just very, very different, I think. And if you're wanting to win something, which I think that potentially they can do, well, they have the team to, certainly. Tuchel was a great man for that.
Yeah, agree. And of course, many people, just to segue here, wanted him to be in the running for the United job. And some people really didn't. I have to say, I felt quite ambivalent about that one, because
me too.
I kind of sense that he may have a ceiling, and I know he's won big trophies and that kind of thing, and maybe he's had greater success in sort of cups and leagues. I wondered whether he'd be quite the right person to build towards the title, but maybe he's the interim one, and we're still looking for that. Yeah, I guess we thought that would be Ten Hag, didn't we? Or Ollie, and then Ten Hag, and we're still looking for that one that'll get us to break into the top 3. And so, like, I had some concerns there when it comes to United. So I'm certainly not shedding any tears. I might do if that means that Gareth Southgate's anywhere near the United job. So I think the bigger question, of course, is United had famously had these 2 meetings in the past week or so in the SHQ, where their sort of executive team meeting. I'm going to presume that Ten Hag was discussed and they didn't make a move on him. Then they had the other meeting in Manchester where they fired Fergie, and there's an awful lot of compare and contrast as a result of this. So Tuchel going to England removes a pawn from the table, at least for the next 18 months or so. So I'm going to presume that Ten Hag is in place until it becomes completely untenable. And they decided not to take this option up with Tuchel in the summer. So why was it be any different now, apart from the club's desperation, I suppose? So Ten Hag's got Brentford, and then the Fenerbahce game, and then a few others that look reasonable up until the next international break in the middle of November.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. Like, I don't think Thomas Tuchel is he's Guardiola. I don't think he's Klopp. I don't think he's the elite of the elite. And I think he's a manager who you want if you want to win now. And we've seen his track record falling out a little bit with players, but not massively. I think to Bayern, like their players really wanted him to stay. I think Muller, Neuer, Kane all kind of came out and wanted him to stay. So he is very well liked. He was really well liked at Chelsea by the fans and the players. It's just kind of his ability to manage up isn't particularly great. And I feel like at United, it just wouldn't have been a particularly good fit. I feel like for the England, it's kind of what they need right now. And there's no guarantee of success at international football. One team wins. So like, it's really difficult. There's a lot of really, really top managers at international level at the moment as well. But United, it feels like we need someone who is going to be in it for the long term, who's got a history of building a club and staying with it for a while and staying part of the project, and also leaving behind the club in a good state. And I just think Tuchel is a bit... He's nowhere. I think Tuchel has a reputation, which I think is potentially a little bit unwarranted. He's not Conte, he's not Mourinho, but he does leave a bit of a mess, and he does fall out with people. And I think, I just don't think that would have worked in this system, to be honest.
Well, it
I don't
seems
think
that
Tuchel was
United
ever the right fit.
Yeah, it seems that United, there were two. I mean, this is just from the reporting. No, I have no knowledge of this since Ineos don't really leak, but it seems that the issues at United were one around money, and I have to say I'm not sure if I believe that now, since he'll be taking a massive discount on his wages to take the England job, and then two around the structure, and clearly the new executive team, new ownership and exec team are trying to put a structure in place where they can move more consistently between managers by having a club style and having more control over the players that are brought in. I think everyone kind of agreed that's the model that United had to move to, rather than going to a sort of halo manager, like a savior who will come in and sort everything out because, hey, it doesn't work. Didn't work with Moyes, didn't work with Van Gaal, didn't work with Mourinho, didn't work with Ole, hasn't worked with Ten Hag. So we're changing, but Tuchel is up the old school where he wants more control. And after having bought 21 players for Erik, well, some of them were loans, are we going to go through that all over again? And I guess the feeling was that Tuchel would want that control, and United didn't want to give it to him. And so it doesn't feel like a good fit. Hopefully it will be for England, I guess. I mean, I'm such a fair weather England fan in that I will only actually get interested during the tournaments, and the rest of the time I barely could care at all. I didn't watch any of the England games in the recent international window.
Yeah, I kind of just hope he does succeed to kick the xenophobes and to so they can cry a little bit, to be honest, because it did so much of this. I saw because Sky Sports were like rolling out like the red carpet for all the scholars this morning. I don't know if you saw, like Dean Ashton was on there, Danny Mills was on there, like real academics of the football world were like walking up.
I need to hear from Jamie O'Hara.
That's
O'Hara, no pundits.
And it's just nonsense. It's just like lazy. I know this is such a cliche term, but lazy journalism. Just you've not thought about anything apart from the fact that he's got a German passport, and it's just really tiresome to read this kind of rubbish. And like Jeff Powell in the Daily Mail writing in the third paragraph of his piece was referencing Henry V or something. Like seriously, grow up. Like it's like, and the outrage in some corners of the internet. Like if you had that much energy for like the children of Gaza or the kids in Lebanon, like why are you getting so wound up by this nonsense? It's baffling, honestly.
Well, Tom, it is England, and
yes,
I think we know. I think we know. Yeah. All right. Well, that is Thomas Tuchel off to England. Short-term contract, apparently at his behest. So he may only have the 18 months. Although if he wins the World Cup with England, everyone will forget that he is German. Frankly, he could live on TV eat babies if he wins the World Cup, and he'd still be a national hero. There you go. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Hit the subscribe button if you want to get notifications about our videos, and like this if you like it, and drop us a comment, any of you do. Often with questions of my parentage, which I thank you very much for. All right. Bye now.